Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the LilyGrace Lifestyle Podcast. Today, I have one of my favorite professors ever from Wentworth on, the first professor that I've ever had on the podcast. And I'm so excited. Her name is Sylvia Masters. Some of you may know her. And I can't wait to talk to you today. Just a little one-on-one.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming on. I'm so excited. The thing that I always ask my guests is what defines your lifestyle?
That is such a great question. Um, the first words that came into my head were like sort of chill,
Hmm.
like I think after a bunch of years of sort of like up and down and shifting careers and a bunch of personal changes and stuff, it feels like I'm hitting my stride. So it's like comfortable, I think is the right word for it.
I really like that. Yeah, I totally agree. In that aspect and like the way you teach your classes too. Like I enjoy your structure because it's like very chill in a sense, but obviously you expect a lot of
Yeah,
work from us. But I just really like how you kind of go with the flow and you're very flexible,
right.
especially during this Zoom time. It's very
Right,
different.
exactly.
Yeah. So can you give us your little introduction, your background, where
Sure.
you came from, where you grew up?
Sure. So let's see. Let's start at the beginning. I'm the child of two immigrant parents. Both my folks are from Italy.
Hmm.
So I was first born here. I'm an only child, and grew up spending a lot of time in Italy, which I think was really beneficial to my growth as just a human because I feel like when you're exposed to more cultures, you tend to be a little bit more empathetic and just have a little bit more of an open mind, and there's just, and thinking in two languages is helpful too, actually.
Oh.
But yeah, so that obviously was a huge shaping factor in my life, and I feel very connected still to Italy, although I haven't been able to go in a while. But it's a huge part of who I am. So I grew up in Queens. My folks met actually in New York, not in Italy, because they were from
Oh.
opposite sides of Italy. So still married. They're still in the apartment I grew up in Queens.
Oh.
So I went to high school. I went to Stuyvesant High School, which was science and is a science and math high school. There were three of them down in New York. So I went to Sty and you know really developed. I mean, I always knew I liked science back, like I like data, I like information. So
Mhm.
even though I'm a designer, it still comes into play. So I went to Stuyvesant, and then I went to Syracuse for undergrad, and there I did a my BA in psychology and my Bachelor of Science in um, advertising.
Hmm.
And I took a French minor because I started French classes since I spoke Italian as a kid. I
Wow.
took French classes early on because I was like, well, I know Italian already. Let's try something else. So I was able to stick that in there because I continued to take French classes. So I travel well in Europe. Actually, I'm very very useful as a travel guide.
Wow.
Um, so let's see. So I went undergrad to Syracuse, and after that, I worked in advertising for a while and in New York City, and it wasn't the right fit. Like New York City too, even though I grew up there, like just is too anxiety provoking for me.
Hmm.
And then added on to the fact that it was the advertising world, which is always very pressure, deadline oriented. um, so at one point I was like, I had friends who lived in Maryland, so I moved down to Maryland, and there my career shifted again, and I started working for a cosmetics company. It was one of the Estee Lauder companies, called Prescriptives, where we did like custom blending makeup. So, and it was always a dream of mine as a kid to work with makeup because I loved doing it as a kid. I used to sit there and like put all these eyeshadows on and then like write them down. And then it's so funny because then I was like, hey, this is actually what I'm doing is work. So I
Hmm.
did that I was in Maryland for 5 years doing that, and got promoted through the ranks and ended up being trainer and makeup artist. And then but I always knew that I wanted to do design.
Hmm.
And the idea of retail design was really what was getting me, even when I was working in retail, like just the way how much placement can affect consumer behavior.
Hmm.
Placement of how someone moves around a store and all that was really interesting to me. And I always, like as a kid too, I always moved around my own furniture. Like I had a very sensitive sense of space,
Hmm.
and when things didn't feel right. So I always kind of had that in the background. And I decided after 5 years being in Maryland, I was going to go get my graduate degree in interior design.
Hmm.
So, I kind of like looked everywhere to see where I could go, and I ended up in Boston, going to the Boston Architectural College.
Mhm.
So, and the reason for that is, the BAC is very unique in that it's a concurrent program the whole time you're in school, or at least it was at that point. It has changed a little bit now, whereas you have to work and study the entire time you're there at the same time.
Oh.
So you get a very practical education, and but you also get like, the school more conceptual education. So so I did that, and when I moved here I started working at a design firm, which is actually, they have blown up since they were always well known, but now they're like all over the place, Haseen and Associates.
Yeah,
And I, feel lucky to have been part of them for, gosh, I think I was there for almost 10 years.
that's so
Then
cool.
then after, yeah, so I graduated, but I was still with them from the BAC, and then I went to Gensler for a year and
Mhm.
a half and did commercial interiors, because I noticed when I was at Haseen that I always had more of an interest again in the commercial interior than in the private residential,
Right.
because I love the fact that in, say, in workplace, like, you affect so many people, as opposed to like in residential, it's a very limited number of people, and
Hmm.
it's just different sensibilities, and I was
Mhm.
attracted more to commercial. So I went there. Then I decided I didn't want to work at design firms anymore, and I pivoted again and went to a furniture dealership. Worked there for about 7 years, I think. And at that point, that's when teaching started to kind of happen, because Lynette Panarelli and I graduated from the BAC together.
Hmm.
So she started teaching at Wentworth, and she would reach out and say, "Hey, do you mind coming to a review this summer?" So, one year I went to the final review. The next year I went to the mid and the final. And then the year after that, I went multiple times. And then one time she was away in Germany, and I
Yeah,
subbed her class for her. And then just a
that's so
little bit
cool.
at a time, um, it started to just snowball.
Mhm.
And it before I actually made the complete transition from the furniture dealership to teaching, I
Mhm.
also bumped into the coaching thing, the life coaching thing, and it happened in that transition time.
Huh.
So yeah, I've been all over the place, and all over the place. But to me, I've always said that there's always, like, when I look at it, there's a string that ties it all together, and
Yep.
it makes sense for me. Like, someone might look at it and go, "Oh my gosh, you did advertising, then makeup, then this and that," but they're all part of who I am.
Yeah.
And but to me, teaching then is sort of the culmination of all of them.
Mm. Yeah, I can totally see that because you're teaching about a subject that you love and you're kind of using those skills that you learned in school, psychology, all that. That's so cool.
Yep.
I love your journey and I didn't know a few of those things about you. Like I didn't know about your parents in Italy and you grew up in
Yeah.
Queens. Like I think that's so cool. So when you came to Boston, did you fall in love with the city? Is that why you're still here?
I did. There's a scale to Boston that feels much more comfortable to
Yeah.
me. Also, you have to remember I moved up here when I was like about 30, I think.
Hmm.
So, which is, with all these things, I give away my age a little bit more, which I don't mind. I
Yeah.
have no problem growing older. But yeah, I moved here. I've been here 20 years. So yeah, I moved here,
Wow.
and school at the BAC takes a while because you're doing
Huh.
the concurrent education.
Mhm.
So it took 5.5 years to get through the program, which is actually pretty good, because I think the average is like 7.
Oh my
So,
gosh.
and then I just started work. I was working at Hasina, and I loved being there. And
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, I felt really comfortable here.
Yeah.
Whereas New York, like, every time I go back, like, after a few hours, in Manhattan, I start having, like, chest pains and anxiety attacks. So it's just much more my speed, probably because it reminds me a little more of Italy. Like,
Yeah.
it's just a smaller scale and a slower pace. And by the time I moved here, I wasn't like, didn't really care about going to clubs or anything like that. So yeah, it was
Yeah.
perfect.
That's so funny. No, I love that. I love that. Yeah, I was just curious because that's so cool. I've been to New York City a couple times and I thought or I got into FIT, but I was like, I don't know about that life. Like I am very fast paced, but I think I felt more at home in Boston. It was very homey, New
Yep.
England. I love that. So,
Yeah, and it's a slightly smaller circle, so you can really,
yeah.
you can You know, every industry is small at one point, right? If you've
Yeah.
been in it long enough, you end up seeing the
Right.
same faces. But the- really, Boston is much smaller than the New York circle. So if you make good inroads, it's a great place to be.
Yeah. And you talked about Lynette kind of reeling you into Wentworth to be a
Yep.
teacher, professor. I think I remember my freshman or sophomore year, you came in to talk about furniture, I believe, like commercial
Yes, yes,
furniture.
yes.
I remember
Yep,
it
I did that
vaguely.
too.
Were you still
Yes.
working at that point at the furniture?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought. Cause I
Yep.
remember you there, but then I was like, oh wait, I have her as a professor junior year, whatever
Right.
year it was. So that's so cool. Cause I remember
Yeah.
too, was it last year you became a full-time faculty?
Yes.
Yeah, that's so
Yeah.
exciting.
I did, so I tried to, like, straddle both worlds for a while and do, like, my
Hmm.
day job and teaching at the same time,
Yeah.
but at one point, so I was an adjunct and that was fine, I was kind of making it work, but the spring of 2019, um yeah, that's right. 2019, I was like, there was a professor that left the research class like a month
Hmm.
in. So Rachel Pike, who was the chair at the time, said, "Hey,
Yeah.
would you be willing to teach this other class too?" So I ended up teaching the seniors in their studio for that semester and the research class that then led to the senior project, and
Right.
I absolutely loved it. Every class, every time I taught something, I realized how second nature it felt to me. Not necessarily
Yeah.
the subject matter, like I still have to relearn a lot of things, because trust me, your professors need to relearn a lot of things when they first start a class,
Yeah.
but just the idea of like connecting with this age group, and just like having like a very honest conversation with people even when I'm teaching.
Yeah.
um, but so I was an adjunct, like a full-time adjunct that summer, and then that fall, I believe I was offered a 1-year appointment. So I was technically full-time, but it was only on a year basis.
Hmm.
So then the actual like full-time job came up, and I applied for that, and then I got that and technically started that this fall.
Wow. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I have to say as a professor, like I love your classes because you're right, you talk so real to us. Like I feel like you're so good with this like age group, and like your personality is just so fun and you just are so raw, and I love that about you. So that's
Oh,
really
thank you.
cool. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Of course. And guys, right now I have her for senior research, and she's my professor. We're going through the senior capstone process for interior design. And if you didn't know, Wentworth has capstone projects at the end of your senior year. So that's kind of like where we're at now in classes, at least.
Yep.
Yeah.
So we're putting the groundwork together for you to then get started on your projects as soon as the classes take up again in May for the summer semester.
I know. And it's looking at my calendar. I was like, oh my gosh, we have 2.5 weeks left, less than that.
I
And
know.
I'm like, holy
It's
cow.
always amazing to me. I know. It's so crazy. It's like at the beginning you look at the syllabus and the schedule like, "Oh my god, that's so long." And then all of a
Yeah,
sudden you're like, "Oh my god, it's the end."
I know.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
the pros and cons to college, I guess. Like I
Yep.
love school. I love all the classes and stuff, and I have gotten used to the Zoom online stuff. I've gotten
Yeah.
comfortable with it. Have you? Or are you
Yep.
missing like
Um, I'm okay with it. I did the summer for the seniors last year, all Zoom for their capstone.
mm,
And I mean, I think it worked well. That I've done hybrid as well. In this semester, I'm actually teaching the freshmen as hybrid. I have half of them online and half of them in person. So I
oh
kind of
nice.
juggle that. This semester, honestly, felt a little more challenging. I
Yeah.
think there's a level of burnout that everybody's
Yes.
hitting. Students just seem just kind of tired, and I think faculty as well. I mean, I'm hearing it across the board. It's just, it's been a long haul. And I
Mhm.
think, freshmen too, like they have not been on campus really until this
Right.
semester.